Hello BookTube and welcome to yet another video in my 2020 library series. Today we're doing, or in this video, we're doing part 9 of the science fiction and fantasy section of the library. So we begin with the last N.K. Jemisin book, which is technically the first. This is the Inheritance trilogy. An omnibus edition of the Inheritance trilogy that launched Jemisin's career, including, where's I find the table of contents? The 100,000 Kingdoms, the Broken Kingdoms, the Kingdom of Gods, and a exclusive to the anthology or omnibus edition, the Awakened Kingdom, I think is what it was called. Was that the first one? Yeah, the Awakened Kingdom. I tried the 100,000 Kingdoms ages ago and didn't get on with it, but I'm looking forward to eventually reading the entire trilogy. Hopefully without this edition falling apart. I mean, I'm not too rough on my books, but sometimes I worry. Particularly the Chronicles of Amber from Roger Zelazny. That one I'm definitely afraid will fall apart on a reading. Next is a collection of John Carter books. This is the John Carter's of Mars collection by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This includes A Princess of Mars, The Gods of Mars, The Warlord of Mars, Thuvia Maid of Mars, and The Chessmen of Mars. Picked this up earlier this year, I think. There was a readathon of the John Carter books, or the Barsoom series, which is the Martian name for Mars. And it started with Princess of Mars, but I don't think it actually carried on after Princess of Mars. Which is kind of a good thing because I really didn't like The Princess of Mars. I mean, I'm interested in the series, but actually reading the series is not entirely pleasant experience. The writing's not terribly good. And next is The Women's War by Jenna Glass. Picked this up last year and haven't gotten around to it yet. It's about a group of women, or like a princess who's becomes queen, largely because there are no men in her family left to succeed to the throne, and she rebels against the sort of royal court's attempt to control her or something, and she eventually discovers a power that either have been denied women or that women only can wield. And that sort of starts, I want to say, a bit of a gender war. But I mean, I haven't read it yet, and hopefully I'll get to it sometime next year. Next up is The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. This is a space opera about a found family. And I liked it, but I don't know. I need to come back to this book. I mean, there were good parts. I mean, there were some really good parts, but there were also parts where I think maybe more depth could have been given, or something. I think it was missing something. But I want to go back and have another go at it. This is the Avericonium Omnibus by M. John Harrison. This includes and the Pastoral City, A Storm of Wings, Invericonium, the Lamia and Lord Chromis, Verconium Knights, The Luck in the Head, Strange Great Sins, Lords of Misrule, The Dancer from the Dance, and A Young Man's Journey to Veraconium. It's an ex-library book from Montgomery County Library in Conroe, Texas. And I read Pastoral City ages ago, and it didn't really work all that well for me. So. Anyway, but I might give it another go at some point and see if my opinion changes. Next is The Ascent of Wonder, The Evolution of Hard SF edited by David G. Hotwell and Catherine Kramer. This is a earlier anthology to the hard science fiction renaissance that I showed a few days ago. Had some really good stories in it. My library used to have a copy of it, and then they withdrew it, and I'd been looking for it for ages, and I decided to go ahead and buy it used from a Libris. Mage's Blood, Book 1 of the Moontide Quartet by David Hare. Ex-library book from Jackson District Library. Wonder where that's from, or where that's at. More Than This by Patrick Ness. This is a near future YA novel about a young man who, after a suicide attempt, finds himself waking up in his own home out of some kind of incubator machine. And the story progresses from there of what his life was like in this simulated environment, as well as living in a wasteland of what was once the United Kingdom. Read it, it's been quite some years ago that I read it, and I really enjoyed it. Although, one critique I had of the book is that the main character is gay. But his identity is never quite articulated. He has this relationship with a classmate of his, but it's never really defined or what their relationship is. And I think that was the one issue I had that kind of bugged me. Also, I think the landing isn't quite stuck. That it's sort of, obviously it's a sequel hook, but, it's too ambiguous to really satisfy, I think. The Promise of Space and Other Stories by James Patrick Kelly. This is a collection of short stories by a science fiction writer who I think primarily writes science fiction. And the collection didn't really impress me. I'll come back to it at some point, but when I read it last year, it really didn't impress me all that much. The Ingenious by Darius Hinks. This is a new weird novel about a city that basically incorporates other bits of locations it travels through. It basically travels through dimensions, and it collects refugees and new bits of the city wherever it appears. And the stories featuring a group of criminals and renegades from this one world who are trying to get back to their homeworld to overthrow a dictatorial government while also trying to survive in this weird city. And eventually, the main character is drawn into the schemes of one of the mysterious rulers of the city. And all hell breaks loose from there. There are some interesting bits of the novel, but to be honest, the main antagonist is far, far more interesting than the main character is. And I think that sort of that disconnect really doesn't do the novel any favors. Another collection by Robert E. Howard. This is The Black Stranger and Other American Tales. And this is a collection of short fiction by Robert E. Howard set in the U.S. that I really need to get to. Picked this up from Golden's a few years ago. The Firestone by Tanya Huff. I'll need to get to. And Bone Shaker by Sherry Priest. This is a steampunk novel featuring a 19th century zombie outbreak in, I think, Portland or Seattle, or the Pacific Northwest, and about a woman trying to rescue her son from this apocalypse, using a improved dirigible. Furyborn, the Imperium Trilogy, Book 1 by Claire Legrand. Really need to get to. The Cold Commands, Book 2 of A Land Fit for Heroes by Richard K. Morgan. This is a sequel of The Still Remains, and it follows the adventures of the main characters from the previous book. Pretty much in the same conflict that they were in from the first book. Not really as... I think, to be perfectly honest, The Still Remains should have been a standalone. That. One and done. I don't think the sequels really do anything to add to the overall story, and it does get to be a bit repetitious in story beats. The Song of All by Tina LeCount Myers. Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. What can I say about this book? So it's about Gideon, who is an indentured servant in the Ninth House, in a sort of space empire that relies on necromancy. Gideon has made several attempts to run away, and she's always been caught. On her most recent escape attempt, and after her subsequent capture, she is forced by her lord, Harrowhawk, to accompany her to this competition amongst the houses to fulfill a necessary role in the Emperor's court as her swords person. And so they go to this planet where the competition will be held. They're locked in a house with all of the other competitors, and a series of murders take place. And Harrow and Gideon, and Gideon and Harrowhawk eventually have a relationship. The novel would have been a heck of a lot better had Gideon successfully escaped the Ninth House, and Harrowhawk spent the rest of the book trying to track her down. I did not like this book at all. It No, I did not like this book at all. Next is, and finally for this shelf, Master of Sorrows by Justin Call. So that wraps up shelf 9, or part 9 of the science fiction and fantasy section of my library tour. I'll be right back with part 10, and later on tonight there will be weekly reads. So until then, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.